Today, we're diving into the powerful ideas in Katherine May's book, Wintering. It's really a guide for how to get through those inevitable, difficult times in life. Those periods when we feel totally left out in the cold. Does that sound familiar? It's this constant pressure, right? To always be achieving, always be happy, to just power through no matter what's going on. It's a feeling that can lead straight to burnout. And it is the exact problem Katherine May is tackling here. She calls this the lie of eternal summer, this deeply ingrained belief that our lives should be a nonstop season of growth and sunshine. But as she discovered firsthand, life, well, it just doesn't work that way. Yeah, this book was born from her own personal perfect storm. Her husband suddenly got incredibly sick. She was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and her young son started suffering from anxiety so debilitating that he had to leave school. It was just this collision of crises that made it absolutely impossible to pretend it was still summer. This reality forced her to find a totally new way to cope. And that's what led her to the central concept of wintering, the idea that rest isn't a failure. In fact, it's a radical and totally necessary act. So what exactly is wintering? Well, she defines it as any fallow period in life. Maybe it's caused by grief or illness or just pure burnout, where you feel cut off from the rest of the world. The crucial idea here is that this is not a personal failure. It's a vital phase for retreat and eventually renewal. May pulls this powerful lesson straight from the natural world. Think about it. A tree doesn't fight the frost. It adapts. It sheds its leaves in what she calls an act of brutal efficiency just to conserve energy and survive. And she argues that we need to learn how to do the same. Now, this idea of adapting like nature, it requires a huge shift in how we think about our lives. Instead of seeing life as this straight line that's always supposed to be trending upwards, we can learn to embrace its natural cycles of growth, decay, and then rebirth. And here are those two mindsets in direct conflict. On one side, you've got the myth of linear progress. If you're not constantly moving forward, you're failing. But on the other side is the reality of a cyclical life, which understands that those dormant periods are absolutely essential for any future growth. Okay, one of the most powerful metaphors in the whole book is the fallow field. Farmers know you can't just plant the same field season after season after season without completely depleting the soil. It has to rest. In the same way, doing nothing isn't laziness for us. It's the essential work our minds and bodies need to do to recover. This contrast really gets to the heart of the book's message. Our culture tells us to beat the blues, just push through it. May's perspective is one of active acceptance, leaning into the quiet, feeling what you need to feel, and trusting that it's all part of a necessary cycle. And get this, it turns out our modern lives are actually fighting our own biology. For centuries, people used to sleep in two phases during the winter, with this quiet, reflective period in between. Our bodies are literally hardwired for a different rhythm when it gets cold and dark. But wintering isn't just about survival. It's about discovering these unexpected gifts that can only be found when we finally slow down. It's about finding real, tangible value in the dark. For instance, take Tromsø, Norway. It's a city where the sun doesn't rise for months. Now, you might expect widespread depression, but instead, May found a culture that actually embraces the darkness. They have this concept called cosily, which treats the dark not as an empty void, but as a cozy container for connection and community. Now, to dig deeper into our relationship with the darker parts of life, May uses this really powerful metaphor. She asks a simple question. Why are we so terrified of wolves? Because our fear is largely based on myth. The reality is, wolves aren't solitary villains. They live in these devoted family packs and are incredibly caring parents. They are not just symbols of hunger. In this fear, it has a long, dark history. Wolves were systematically hunted across Europe for centuries, which hardwired this deep cultural dread right into our stories and into our psyches. But here's the most profound idea, which comes from the naturalist Barry Lopez. What if we hate wolves because we see a reflection of our own worst habits in them? Their feast or famine instinct kind of mirrors our own consumerism, our tendency to take way more than we actually need. So in the end, maybe our fear of the wolf is really a fear of ourselves. Another one of these unexpected gifts of winter is embracing the physical cold. May actually explores cold water swimming, which has proven benefits like boosting dopamine and reducing tension. It's an act that forces you into the present moment and builds some incredible resilience. And that resilience, that's the whole point, because every winter, no matter how dark it gets, holds the promise of spring. The quiet work you do in your fallow period is what prepares the ground for new life. So, the crucial takeaway is this. In our hyperproductive world, slowing down and resting feels radical. But as May writes, it is absolutely essential. And it's so important to see this as a skill. You don't have to be perfect at it. Each time you allow yourself to truly winter, you learn something. You get better at recognizing the signs and trusting the process, which just equips you for the next time life calls for a retreat. Because that is the ultimate takeaway here. Winter isn't an end, it's a vital, it's an active, and it's a transformative season. The hard work of true rest is precisely what allows you to blossom again when your personal spring finally arrives. So this leaves us with a final question. We all know another winter is coming, whether it's next month or next decade. The only real question is, how will you welcome it?